What's up, everybody? Nick Powell's publisher of 1851franchise.com here with another episode of Meet the Zor. If you like these videos, click subscribe and you can meet other franchise brands and learn their stories. Today, we are talking Taxi Mom, coming up next. I mean, you are the taxi mom. So usually I say we're going to start with your story, not the brand story, but it's one and the same. So Yolanda, thanks for doing this. Start off by telling me your franchise story. How did you accidentally fall into franchising?
Well, I've always known that I wanted to franchise. I just didn't know how to franchise or what to expect when it came to franchising. When I stumbled across the need, I really needed the service. And I couldn't find anybody locally to help me because I used to travel. I worked in corporate for 17 years. And when you live within a 2-mile radius of the schools, you get no you get no transportation. So my son had to walk across a major intersection every day. And when I travel and his dad was working, that was just nerve-wracking. And so I started to really look into it and do my deep dive. And then I came home and I introduced the idea to my family and my kids, and they helped me pick out the name. And we started service in August of 2004, and we're just now celebrating 20 years.
That's great. When did you decide to franchise?
I decided to franchise during that time. But what happened was my husband passed away in 2011. So I went into an autopilot mode. I really didn't know. I mean, it was so unexpected. And I was just like, during 2015, maybe one of my oldest sons says, "Mom, your dream has always been franchising. Why are you not doing it?" And I had to step back and really think, why am I not doing this? When you're faced with adversity and a challenge like that, you just kind of go into this autopilot mode of not really survival, but you really want to take care of your family, your kids. And, he died on a Monday. We buried him on a Friday. And the following Monday, I was in an office doing an intake to make sure that my kids were going to be okay. And we started therapy sessions. So we went through years of therapy. And then that's when my son said, "Mom, you got to do it." And I said, "You know what? You're right. I need to." So that's when I started looking into it. I went to iFranchise. We had already proven concept because I had my sisters move in from Waco to Dallas, and started like these little micro areas and built those up. So we had already had the proof of concept. It was just the money that it takes to franchise. But then nobody really talks about the money that it takes to scale.
Yeah, lots to unpack on that. Before I unpack that, how many franchisees do you have today?
We have 17.
And how in your gut, how do you feel about that?
Well, I've definitely made mistakes along the way. But in my gut, I feel really good just because I do know that it does work. And I do know that there's such a need out there.
Yeah. Let me give a few comments, and I want to unpack going through the becoming a franchisor, because I think there's something interesting there. So from my standpoint, I mean, I've thought about it many times. I mean, so much that I'm like, maybe I should just book an Uber Black to take my kid to school. But then the truth is that then I would be very uncomfortable with, even at 12 years old, him going in a stranger's car, not knowing if he's going to get to school or not. Like, that doesn't feel right. So then it obviously turns into, whether it's inconvenient or not, we drive our kids to school, which we lived in Atlanta up until December. One took 15 minutes to get to school, 15 back, that's 30. The other one was an hour there and an hour back. And so that's a lot of drive time. So even out of the convenience for working parents, can you solve that? Second comment I have is, like, I think about the audiences of buyers. And I think about, like, the Goddard schools and the Primrose, like, there's all these that exist. And so there's this could be a supplemental business for that. Plus, it could be a lead generation source for them to get new students in if they offered it in their community. The other thing I'll say is, like, I think about what Uber as a business has done, and the potential for disruption, I think, is getting high. Every Uber driver that I talk with, when I get in their cars, they talk about just how the percentages have gone down and down and down. And I would say it's almost 90% of the time they'll say, well, what did you pay for this fare? And if I say $40, they say, well, I'm only getting $6. And
Wow.
so I see greed taking over a category that was supposed to be deeply valuable for those that were deciding to go into that as a profession. And so I look at all these areas. I look at the Goddard schools. I can look at Uber, and I can see that there's a pathway here to get franchisees. When I'm saying that, does that connect, and have any of the 17 come from either of those two directions?
No. No, they've actually come from the moms that actually are looking for this service and they want to bring it to their community. What makes us different than an Uber is that we're not an on-demand service. We are a subscription-based service. So that's a very big difference. We do have competitors like Kid Kaboo, Hop Skip Drive, which tailor to kids. But again, you don't know your driver. All of our drivers are W-2'd, and they get the same driver over and over again. So that makes it very, very helpful for that parent to make that decision during that process that they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. Now, here in July, there was a parent that actually ordered an Uber Medical for their 12-year-old daughter, and she was unfortunately, she was sexually attacked by this driver, and it's been all over the news. And, it just breaks my heart that sometimes, I never put judgment on a parent, because when you are in a situation that you have no idea what you're going to do, and when they find us, like today I had a conversation with the parent that we don't even service their area, but we did it over the summer, and they were just so grateful. And just to be able to help that person and that parent is super important to us, because we do know the importance of safety, and especially when it comes to kids, because it's such a big liability.
Boy. Let me put one clarity on my Uber comment. The Uber driver today if you ask them what they are, they would say entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So I not on the demand side, but the reality is you have this built-in entrepreneur who already knows that the vehicle is a form of making money.
Yeah.
If you can connect the dot and say, well, look at what a residual business would look like. This is what we can do, because I would imagine the hours of operation are very tight. It's around the beginning of school, end of school, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, and then they have the drive time as far as like 6:30 to 8:30 in the morning, and then they start at 2:30 in the afternoon and end at 5:30 in the afternoon. So there's plenty of gap time, but there's plenty of kids that are out there that utilize the service.
What's the cost to get into the business?
It does range. What I did was I looked at student population. So the school student population, and we start at 42,000, 52,000, and 62,000. That's how we start it. And we look at that population, and based on that population, that's how we sell them. So if it's 30,000 students, that starts you off at that $62,000. If it's 10,000 students, it's going to start you off at 42.
Is that all in, or is that just the franchise fee?
That's just the franchise fee there's a $12,000 fee that is set for marketing for 1 year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what's the all in on an investment?
The all in can range anywhere from 78,000 up to 113,000.
Okay. And are you making an earnings claim in item 19?
Yes, we are. We're brand new to this. So all I'm doing is just the gross, because I'm going to be honest with you. This is all new to me, and I'm just now learning. So yes, we do have an items 19, but it's not the full blown, because we're still trying to figure out like our KPIs, and because we're just so new to everything.
Yeah. What are you reporting as gross?
On our AUV, we did over, I think it was like 1.3 million.
Average unit volume, or it's system wide?
System-wide sales,
Okay,
yes.
got it. And then
AUV was like 100,000, I believe,
okay. And so do you break it down per van or per territory?
per territory.
Yeah, I mean, if it were me, and we talked about this before we went on. Now comes advice. Well, first I want to make the comment. What you said about I became a franchise, but nobody tells me what it's now going to take to really grow. That unfortunately, disgust is a big word, but it's close to disgust to me because for you, you're an entrepreneur. Your story is clearly heartfelt. There's a reason you did this. And in my opinion, the responsible pathway to giving you the coaching is say, Yolanda, it's going to cost you about $100,000 to set up your franchise. And then you want deals done, you're going to have $100,000 per 4 deals that you're going to get done. And that coaching may put off some people to making the decision to franchise, because then after you get the franchisee, now you have to support them.
Mm-hmm.
And so a franchise business is sometimes sold as about $100,000, but the reality is the true cost could be well north of millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And I think, I feel for you on that pathway, because that's the big gap that I think has to be closed in this industry. Is we just have to be a little bit more kinder and transparent with how things work. From your number standpoint, the reason I would break it down by van is, and I'm making odd comparisons, but I think about like anybody that I've known that's built up a limo business. Mm-hmm. They talk about the speed to getting more transportation on the street because each vehicle for them has a KPI or a profitability attached to it. And so how do you keep reinvesting to the point where you've invested in a large enough fleet that the fleet is now kicking off more money than it costs you to go get more into the fleet? And if you're setting up a franchisee that way, it's interesting. But on the flip side, because you're also a lifestyle business, it's almost something to keep a parent busy during the day and give them purpose. And sometimes when it's a purpose thing, the net profitability doesn't matter as much. They obviously don't want to lose money, but they want to take care of it. The other thing that I hear, and I'm going to put this thought in your mind. When I hear franchise fees that are that large, I would imagine part of the magic of your success early on was you bootstrapped, and your hustle and your grit was a form of your currency. Mm-hmm. And when you put these fees in place for some human beings that have tremendous grit and hustle, it eliminates them from being able to qualify. And so therefore, the story that you have and how you work to ramp this up and build this over 20 years is not a story they can have because they don't even have enough to get to the starting line. When I started our company, I had $10,000 in the bank. That means I would have been rejected as one of your franchisees. And today I have, a multi-million-dollar business, but that wasn't because of my cash. It was because of my grit and hustle. So, but I love the category. And the last thing I'll say, and then I just want your comments. It's funny. I was looking at the first video that I saw on your website, and you're picking up kids and you're putting the thermometer on their foreheads. I was like, wow, that video has aged so fast. That's so far gone. It's crazy. So create a new video there. But I think you're in a very interesting category, especially if you look at grit and hustle and figure out a way to show scale and maybe a different light. It could be a tremendous business opportunity.
Yes. When I'm looking at a franchise owner, what I look at is the grit, like what do they have, what it takes to really get out and hustle. This is definitely not, this is not something that, you can come into and not be an owner operator. Mm-hmm. You have to know this business. And I always ask, how do you feel about owning a fleet of 12?
Great question.
Yeah. How do you feel about owning a fleet of 12? Because that's what we want to see. We want them to own a fleet of 12 to 15 passenger vans. 25 per van is what we normally put into those vans, is 25 to 32 kids because of the stack timing. So, that's super important to me, that they know their area, that they know, they have to live in their area, and they have to understand that stack timing and, what it's going to take to build it.
Mm-hmm. Other thing that I'm gonna tell you, because when looking at your website, I saw that the app seems fantastic.
The app
So
is great.
so if I think about the franchise opportunity, I land on the site. You talk about let's get rolling. You get into our values. You talk about where we're growing. But if I'm a franchisee, start off by showing me what I get, because I think that that's a part of the magic, and you've invested I'm sure, a lot of time and money into it.
Mm-hmm.
The other area, when I'm looking at the videos, and obviously I'm looking at it almost as a franchise buyer to get a sense of what is the opportunity. Can I clearly see it? And at the end of the day, there's two things that franchisees want. They want culture and they want the business opportunity. But I'm looking at these vans, and some of them are more white than others, meaning like it is not overly wrapped. And I look at those vans, like if I was going to invest in something corporately, I'd really take the branded experience and say, these are my billboards. And if I have a franchisee that has 12 in the field, that's 12 billboards that I don't have to pay for if they don't park it in some lost parking garage. Like, keep them on the street because it's a message. And so you look at that and look back at that and say, is this telling a story to three audiences?
Mm-hmm.
The child, when they're getting in there, are they excited? Like, is this something that's special for them, and almost like an upscale experience, much greater than taking a crowded bus? And then secondly, the parents, to say, this is why we have safety. And even as simple as I'll see non-government vehicles say stay 15 feet back, or whatever the thing is on the back, like, add the safety labels to the vehicle to tell that story. And then third is the franchise buyer. And I wouldn't use the term franchise. I would use owner operator, someone in the community, because like that's ultimately what you're trying to find. And I think I typically look at a business and I'm like, I see all the pieces. It's just a slight re-scrambling of it could make a big difference. But I start off by asking you if you're happy on the 17. You go, I am happy, but I'm sure you have dreams of making this much larger too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, being that I'm 5 years in, I think this past year I kind of took a step back just to kind of reevaluate to see which direction I wanted to go as far as, scaling the business. Because anytime that you go to any of these IFA events or any kind of event, everybody's talking about quick, 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 you got to hurry up and do this. And, I got into that spin of, oh my gosh, I got to hurry up and do this. But then when you do that, you make the mistakes of bringing in the wrong people. And, that's when I sat back and said, okay, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it this way. This doesn't feel like me, because feeling like me, I like to go at my own pace. What am I in a hurry for?
It's a great point. I mean, look, if anybody can talk about the understanding of life being short, it's you. And so if you're looking at that and saying life is short, let me keep a governor on who I want to work with so I can make every minute that I have count. You have that, and you've gone through that life experience to have that perspective. The second route or statement that I would say is, you go, if you sold 2 units this year and 4 next and 8 the after and 16 and then 32 and then 64, what happens is it allows you to build infrastructure around supporting the franchisees. I disagree with brands that grow too fast, and I've seen way too many people, the franchisee, the franchisor, and the customer, get impacted by one of these fancy FSOs that say we're going to go sell 1 million of these in 5 minutes. I think that's irresponsible. But then again, it comes back to giving you the right guidelines and support. And this industry is is happy to lift up the superhero stories, but very rarely talks about the failures as a way to help others. And I think that's important. So look, you push pause, and I think that's valuable to a franchise buyer that might be watching this. So let's say a candidate's been watching us to this point. What else do you want them to know about the business?
You have to really love kids. Getting into the business, you have to have the right reasons, and your reasons to being the right reasons of wanting to be involved in any kind of company at all, because if you're not passionate about kids, you're not going to be passionate about this job.
Yeah.
And, I love what I do every single day. I still drive from time to time. And this summer I took on a job, and the parents, they're both doctors, came out and they talked to me this morning, and just that gratitude that you see in their eyes, and just like, thank you so much for just taking that time. Second quarter for me has been about communication with my parents, because I feel like I kind of lost that touch, and customer service goes a long way, a very long way. And so we've gotten back to the basics of talking to the customer, giving them all the information that they need. You have to be willing to talk to people and not be afraid. And you have to be willing to go out and network your business.
So out of curiosity, so there's these down hours. So I did my last morning drop off. How many hours are off?
5.
Okay. I'm going to throw this out there. I don't know if this thought has crossed your mind, but there's another audience that could use transportation help during that time, and your mission connects with me well, which is our aging population. Have you ever looked at offering that as an option? Yeah.
Yes, we have. We actually have done several senior citizens in our community. They just want to go and get their hair done. I had this gentleman that his name was Ralph, and he was a World War II veteran, and he couldn't drive anymore. And he would ask me to go every Friday. So I'd go every Friday at 10 o'clock, and he would want to go to the grocery store, but he wanted to get out and do his own shopping. So he would make a list, and I would go in there with him, and we would just shop, and yes, those are the things that we are working on to add extra streams of revenue. We are also working on contracts with the school because of the bus driver shortage. Bidding those jobs, getting out there and doing that type of stuff. So I'm always thinking about, the next stages of Taxi Mom. And so, we're constantly going and rolling. And I think what I always tell my franchise owners, because they do come in and they do have other ideas, which is great, but I always tell them, focus on the kids. This is your core business. And then as we roll out different things, then we can introduce it at that time.
Yeah, I love it. Well, look, I love what you're doing. I see the gap that you're filling. Kudos to you. 17, you should still be very proud of, and just your mindset of making this better. I can tell you're trying to figure this thing out. So yeah. I appreciate your story. Thanks for sharing some of it with us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, for Yolanda, this is Nick. This is another episode of Meet the Zor.